Welcome, everybody, to this eclipse season transmission. I'm making this recording just after we had the first lunar eclipse in this series. And yeah, I want to know, are you feeling the energies? How are you feeling? Where this particular eclipse is halfway through this series of eclipses, where in Vedic astrology, we're in a Pisces Virgo axis. And I talked about that a little bit in last month's transmission. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's developing. And yeah, I would like to also honor the energies that October generally holds as a gateway, often to life and death, to transitions, and to the ancestors. Right now, as I'm making this transition, this is a series of 2 weeks in the Hindu pantheon around the Pitris, the ancestors. So I've just made a little altar in my house. I've given them some breakfast. I'm saying hello. I'm honoring Yama, the one of the deities associated with death. And it seems that this is a very big theme this month. And not only does eclipse bring around symbolic death, and you're probably starting to feel that even from now. You probably have started to have some about turn shifts and things to just go, oh, that's enough. On a personal note, I was feeling, no, I'm not feeling this eclipse. And then something happened yesterday, just before the eclipse. And I suddenly went, that's that. I resigned from this particular role I've held for a long time. It's time to give this to someone else. That's done. Okay. And it came out of nowhere. Okay. So I'd be interested to hear if this is going on for you. And this is definitely up for us in terms of a lot of what we show up at in the work life, our deepening spiritual life, as many of us are experiencing this year because Rahu is sitting in Pisces. And yeah, just really would love to hear how this is going for you. And also thank you to everybody who's signed up and had an eclipse reading from myself and Madalena. We're really enjoying doing these readings. It's lovely sometimes to do a different sort of reading than what we normally do. And yeah, it's really wonderful. We're seeing a lot of these potential markers for many people with big shifts in their Venusian energies coming into early 2025. And this gives me a lot more hope that this journey for us as Shambhala visionaries, as pioneers of the Aquarian age, of Dakini weavers, is really, really tangible if we put our minds and our aspirations towards it. So, as always, here's a little baby slide about what non-dual astrology is. And I also signpost you to my free video that's up on the website. That I've got a short one and I've got a longer one that people can request. And I'll probably do an upgrade of that in 2025 because Dharma STARS has some very, very exciting news to share you in terms of our work with non-dual astrology and what's happening on the global scale with Kala Chakra, with the Wheel of Time, with its connection to astrology. So do like and subscribe because people who are receiving our regular videos are the ones who will probably have the karmic conditions to understand what we're talking about a little bit more. But in the coming year or two, we have some really great global projects to share with you. Okay, so let's move into just a few things about what we're offering right now, just before we get started. Every month I tailor what we're offering with what's coming through in the timelines. So we are still offering eclipse readings, Madalena and myself, and we look at people's Rahu, Ketu. We also look at what's going on for your Venus in 2025. We also look at how the Saturn Rahu conjunction next year might look for you. And depending on if I've given you a reading or not before, we often look at your year lords in Mayan and Dreamspell astrology to get a bit of a feel for some of the energies that are pertinent to you as well within those systems. So do get in touch if you'd like a reading because these are very affordable 45-minute readings. We put a lot, we talk quite a lot to get a lot of information in there. So it's a very economical way if you can't afford one of our deeper Dharma plan, comprehensive readings. Also, if you'd like to come and visit during one of my book tour events in Northern Ireland or in London, we are going to be doing two events, one in Belfast and one in London in October and November. Okay. And I also want to just let you know that firstly, we have 3 free webinars over the month of October. Again, those are on our website. So if you've been interested in anything like the temple arts, quantum transfiguration, which is a very potent modality that I've been pioneering for over 7 years now, we have information about that. And also we're unveiling a new course, which is so in keeping with the timelines. We're going to be offering a cross-cultural training with many practices and many interviews with wisdom keepers who work with ancestral healing. And we're going to be looking at ancestral healing as a key to the golden age for sacred activists. So that's also launching in October, and we have a free webinar about that. Okay, so let's get on to the astrology. In general astrology, well, we have the solar eclipse that's coming up on the 2nd of October, which really is the pinnacle of this particular eclipse period. We've just gone through the lunar eclipse. Then we come into the solar eclipse, where there's really energy lighting up Virgo for Vedic astrology, forgive me. But I think it's the same in Western astrology this time. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it is. And we also have a partial lunar eclipse on the 17th of October. And as it says partial, yeah, it's not got that packing a punch energy. It's not a full celestial alignment, but it's worth knowing that we're still somewhat in that eclipse time right through until the middle of October. So at the time of making this presentation for you, we've actually got a month of eclipse period. Okay. And also, in many countries around the year, we celebrate death, transitions around the time of what we call Samhain in Celtic cosmology. And this also links into the Day of the Dead, which is in places like Mexico, which is the 1st and 2nd of November. But right at the end of the month, the Samhain portal opens. And as you're going to see, this is really supported by the astrology in some of the systems that we look at today. So we're first going to talk about the sacred Mayan calendar and what's going on here. So on the 29th of September, we go into Akpu energy. And this is leading through the second eclipse. And Akpu is a very strong, fixed, unwavering energy. The sun is always shining wherever it is. And the sun in its lowest form can be seen to represent the ego. And so it's always a time to look at the ego, to make sure we're not shining so brightly that we don't give anybody else any space. But also it's connecting us through to our deeper connection to the Atman, to the holistic soul consciousness, and to our transcendental way of being. So it's great to have this luminary energy, which is very interesting because the sun is going to be eclipsed on the 2nd, but riding through, there is something about this activation of our divine consciousness, which is really taking place right now. And because of the way that the karmic nodes are sitting, Rahu is sitting in Pisces right now. And Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It's very much concerned with matters of transcendentalism. It can be about tying things up from one life to take through to the next cycle. And it's also about intuition and things like this. And a lot of people are activating in their transcendental awareness in this time because Rahu is our forward motion, the forward motion of our karma, which does sometimes lead us to do silly things or to be a little bit too driven. You know, when we're too driven, we don't honor the sacred yin within the balance that is needed in everything. And this can lead us into delusional episodes. And so this is a hallmark of these times because Rahu is in Pisces. It's been a journey even that started last year when Rahu and Jupiter were together in Aries is that we have to be careful about spiritual delusions and the ego or the spiritual ego not taking over. But within this time of Akpu, there is this quest for divinity and holiness. And I love this because I do feel that this wave of increased devotion is going to become more and more felt, especially in 2025. And therefore, during the eclipse period, whilst most of the energy is over in Virgo, which is a lot more about our service and our work, we're still having this forward motion around fostering our intuition, around knowing we're allowed to be intuitive beings, and about our spiritual consciousness. So Akpu is here, probably having a little bit of a laugh with its egoic side with Rahu, but also there is this beautiful strength that's coming in the collective that's, how would I say, helping us to ignite something ancient within us that is our Buddha nature, our connection to source, whatever you may want to call it. Okay. And then that leads into middle of the month, into Akh. And Akh is like the mayor of the town. Akh is straight up. It's very trustworthy. If you look at this picture, that's the red one. It's working with straight lines. It's a conduit between heaven and earth, but it's also very structural. That's why it's seen as having quite a responsible gatekeeper role in society. It's not super woo-woo out there. In fact, I really find that Akh energy lends itself very well to doing things like paperwork and grounding knowledge. So if I've been putting off, say, doing my accounts or writing something that's, I don't know, like ethical or some sort of system structural thing for our organization, I choose things like Akh or Skywalker, which is its counterpart in the Dreamspell calendar. And I find it really useful for me being very grounded in what I have to bring forward. So we are coming from very transcendental, spiritual, slightly egoic energy into this more grounded, practical, how do I anchor this? And this is amazing because this is hitting right as we complete the eclipse season. So it's like, okay, I've been surfing the cosmic superhighway and maybe I've been a bit out there and I've been getting all these codes, but how do we anchor this into the practicality of here and now? And this is very much in keeping with a lot of the energy that on the eclipse on the 2nd is going to be there with so much Virgo energy. It is like, yes, we're being ignited in our forward motion through our Rahu and Pisces, but nearly the planets are all hanging out. Well, not all of them, but most of them are hanging out in Virgo. And this is suggesting that we need to look at our day-to-day affairs. And so some people will be having a death of what they think is their service, their way of working, all of these things. There's a review taking place. And some people may find, oh, I can't work like this anymore. You know, it's not letting me get the balance. What is my work-life balance? Okay. And this is really big for everybody. And depending on where the eclipses sit for you, this is up, but it will be dependent in your personal astrology and where your own karmic nodes sit and where your ascendant sits. But this is definitely something that will benefit from this energy. Is like, okay, now I know the necessary changes I need to make. I'm going to create that structure, those foundations. The new leader emerges. So we've taken something from this eclipse that's activating our deeper Dharma. The job's probably not complete yet, but there's something that we can implement at this time. So yeah, so you may be finding, there are these stable steps I need to make. And this is good because we might fly too high to the sun, like Icarus. And in the first part, and it may not actually be, we might need a reality check to actually harness the shifts that we need to make over in our 3D world. Often when we're in a very multi-dimensional state, I really noticed this over the years. I sometimes get all these downloads and we're in the middle of a really deep weaving and we see through our pattern thinking this reality and we can all join in it. And then we have to go to a supermarket and buy something, or we then have to show up in the 3D world. And sometimes it's like, how do I bridge that? Okay. And we almost feel like we were too high when we were in the moment with the excess energy. But we were kind of in a different dimension where more things were possible. And then this bridge we have to make of how do we actually harness this in the fact that we still have to show up in 3D. It's not complete. The job is not complete. How do we do that? So I think this is a great energy to have at this time. Just taking a sip of my cacao. Okay, and then there's this other level of more dissolving and shifting as we implement what needs to go, stay. How am I practical about this? How can I make this realizable? And then comes along Kame, which is the symbol for death. The beginning of transformation. It's almost like the new implementation of change and the complete dissolving is taking place. So this is wonderful energy because this is sitting during the Samhain portal. This is sitting at the Day of the Dead. This is the traditional time in so many cosmologies when we honor our ancestors. We honor those who are no longer in form. And right now, I feel like there's just such a gateway that these are the days that the Pitris as well. And this is one of the reasons why we're starting this batch of ancestral teachings, because we always end up giving a death course at this time of year, which is going to be available for people who want it. But we thought we would honor the dead this year through the ancestors, because this is ahead. This is like a little mini snapshot of the energy that's going to be hitting in 2026 and 2027 when a collective ancestral portal is going to be opening. And this is the time of the Fuego Nuevo in Mexico, the new fire. We have a great deal of possibility now for very large collective epigenetic and morphogenetic healing. And so there's almost like a little aroma of that's coming here right at the end of the month. And so this is why, if you're interested in doing the work for your ancestors, of knowing some of the shortcuts and the connections across many cosmologies and how we can use that as sacred activism, please get in touch or come to our webinar, because we really want to bring a fleet of you through to these sacred timeless codes and teachings. Okay, I'm having another sip of cacao. Yeah. Oh, at some point I'm going to be telling you all about, wow, look at the cacao shortage and the connection to Venus codes that we're talking about, but I'll save that for another day. Okay, so Dreamspell Calendar. Here in the Dreamspell Calendar, of course, things are a little bit more multidimensional than they may appear in the Mayan calendar. And right now, probably at the time that you're listening to this, from the 24th of September to the 8th of October, so right in the middle of the really big eclipse, the solar eclipse, we have storm energy. And storm is like a purge, of purification, of catalyzing the new essence of us. And what's interesting is the sun is being eclipsed. Our great luminary is being eclipsed. It's kind of hidden while it's doing the work, while it's getting these insights. There's something we can't quite see, but something is activating within us, okay? And so it's very interesting. And you may go through physical detox symptoms at this time. We had the eclipse last night, and I woke up and my body was eliminating many ways. It was just cleaning. And so this may even be visceral for you and physical. You may experience detox symptoms. There will be a shedding of energies as we go into this, but it's really going to help to activate a new layer of awareness. How would I say? It's almost like we're allowed to shed old clothes, old things. And then, it's almost like we shed a layer of skin, and then there's the new skin growing underneath. And it's going to be very fresh and alive and awake. And it's not quite there, it's hidden, but we've got this new skin that's coming, that's going to be the new us, a little bit more of us, a little bit more. Each time, each eclipse, something is upgrading, something is being released. And then on the 7th to the 19th, which is really amazingly correlating with what's taking place with the Ah energy, we have the human. And the human is a lot about free will, so our sovereignty, our knowing what is right on our path for us, not being entrenched in slave codes. A deeper sense of I have this unique contribution to make, and this is what I'm good at, and I enjoy this. We all have to have things in our life that are that. And I think what's happening with the eclipse is that there's pressure being put on the things that just don't fulfill the sacred formula, which is that we have things that are our duty, we have things that are our dharma, and then we have things that are our debt, okay? And we need to balance those. If you're just doing duty and debt, you're not ever going to reach your dharma path. And so, as the shedding has been taking place, the new sovereign being who is understanding more about what their unique gifts are and what they bring through, that innate wisdom, and this is a sign of wisdom, is able to make us more of a multidimensional fractal container. We already are, but our sacred emanation and vibration with the celestial bodies and the cosmos can find its higher vibration. And this is not even complete, but this is leading up to the golden age. So this is why I selected this particular image, which is taken from Jose Arguelles's work. It's the human is a holon. You know, every digit we have correlates with a sign, which correlates with a celestial arrangement. Okay, and everything is a microcosm. And so as we're tweaking over eclipse period, we're actually restabilizing ourselves to be a fractal of alignment. And if we do that, we're going to help all the ecosystems to align. It's very interesting. At the time of making this, we have all these fires. We've got fires in Portugal, fires in the Amazon. We've got floods in Central Europe. There's a lot of extreme weather. And this excess in some places of fire, excess of water, it's not balanced. We don't have a balance of our yin and our yang. And therefore, in our bodies, this is also symbolizing what's going on within us. And so as we clean and upgrade through this eclipse period, we can come to a deeper state of equilibrium within ourselves and to find our place. So as the eclipse energy is putting pressure and endings on that which is not paying off in the workplace so that we can reach our dharma more, as we start to seek balance from just being pummeled by debt and duty, we can find our higher groove. And I can tell you how enriching that is when we find it. For instance, I have recently been given like a role that I have kind of aspired to for a long time, but nobody was paying attention. It wasn't the time, okay? And then it just suddenly just manifested recently, and I feel really happy and really energized. And things that I was just stalling with don't have to be there. And I still have to do lots of my duty and lots of my debt. You know, it's not like I love everything I do. Sometimes I have to do stuff because it has to get done. But some of the things that are definitely part of my dharma are on my lap now. And this makes me feel more enriched and ready to go into this next chapter. So I really, really encourage you through this eclipse period to seek and ask the universe to make it clear to you, even just for this time only, for this 6 months or so until the next set of eclipses. Ask for this to be presented to you, because there is probably something in your working life that needs to be shifted. Okay, so honoring your free will, that we all do have free will. We're not all slaves, but we have to sometimes emancipate ourselves. Okay. Okay, so then we're moving on to the serpent wave spell. And by the way, we're going to be running an ancestral course, and also on the 20th, on the first day of the serpent wave spell, we begin a root chakra, pranayama, yoga, DNA, chakra wisdom, ancestral roots, everything journey. It's just a 9-day journey. But so if you've been wanting to try out our work, This is a really great real-time, very, very potent container. And we often run journeys through this time because we have this fractal of the serpent that is running through our cosmologies around the world. And I've got a chapter on this in my book. And the short version is we all need to understand how our DNA works, how our life force works. We need to come into right relation with things like power, sexuality, death, and the ego. These are where the shadow serpent codes can come in when we're not in right relation to those. So we're starting to help people to understand how this works ahead of this Venusian portal that's opening next year. So people can come into their true, authentic spiritual path rather than what we see, which is unfortunate, of the karma right now that people maybe do tantric work where other people maybe get violated in some way, or where people maybe use some form of enchantment or sorcery in their ceremonies or workshops for money, for sexual power, things like that. And this has existed for a long time, but we have a cleaning of that that's coming. And so this is a very important serpent wave spell because it's really a gateway into some very deep energies that are going to be landing when Saturn and Rahu conjunct next year in Pisces. There is going to be an outpouring of need for shift and to seek authentic spiritual lineage and transmissions. So I'm going to move on now to the Vedic astrology and just what we see with this dance. And I've already been alluding to a lot of this along the way. Just something that's going on is that actually I love the exact nature of everything. In terms of Saturn, which is currently retrograding, it's still in Aquarius, and it's retrograded now on the October the 2nd, so on the same day as the solar eclipse. Saturn goes into the nakshatra of Shatabishak, and Shatabishak is the 100 physicians or the 100 light workers. It's a star system of healing, of understanding and going to the void, but also, yeah, it's an aspiration. It's quite mysterious. It can be quite hermit, quite introverted. It's also one of the main markers for astrologers in Vedic astrology. And it's interesting. Myself and quite a few other astrologers I know all have Shatabishak strongly in our charts. And so this is a really good time to maybe get your astrology lined up because it's a very good time for getting a little bit of a preview on your mission for the next year or two. And you may find that, well, Shatabishak has this, how would I say, slightly hidden other name that Dr. Arjun Pav talks about in some of his transmissions. And it's known as the 100 Avaduts. And Avaduts are light workers. Oh, sorry about the typo, December. So basically, Avaduts are like light workers. They're unorthodox, interesting healers who may be ahead of the time. The Avaduti is the central channel, which we work with in certain tantric practices, and is exceedingly important as a gateway to our spiritual attainment and to moksha, to liberation. So it's very interesting that we have retrograding Saturn because there are maybe things on our spiritual journey that are about the golden age, are about the Aquarian age, that Saturn is now coming at, now we've got this kind of illumination energy of what we're processing from eclipse time. Saturn, Lord of Karma, Lord of Time, is then bringing us to a retrospective to clean up in terms of Shatabishak, to get our light worker codes, to get our visionary codes, to understand and work with the celestial bodies. And then that's going to take us into 2025. And then Saturn is going to be migrating in March into Pisces, excuse me. So there's a really deep, astrological portal there with Saturn. And this is amazing. It lands just right as the solar eclipse takes place. Wow, I didn't see these typos at the time, sorry. I remember, it's because I was finishing this yesterday, but I was slightly mashed by eclipse energies. Okay. Then we also have Mars is currently in Gemini. And Mars is not very happy there, gets a bit angsty. So there's an angsty energy that's in the field. And yeah, so you may find that, yeah, things that you're getting downloads about that need to change in eclipse time, try to be mature about this and try not to take things personally. Often the universe gives us little curveballs, teaches us certain things, and we personalize it. So there's a trigger point and we then project it onto other people. Like, you did this, this is all you, rather than just realizing this is just a cosmic mechanism for me to act, okay? And try to keep the angst and anger and projection out of it, because that is what will create fallout later, okay? So just be careful about that. Mars is also going to have this kind of push-pull energy because it's sitting in it. It comes then at the end of the month into Pusha, into Cancer, and yeah, and when it's in Cancer, it's thirsty. Okay, it's like Mars is sitting there. It's hot. It doesn't really understand how to navigate there very well. And this means that sometimes our Martian energy is like really on and then it's off. It can't quite find its groove, okay? And in many ways, if we look at what's happening with the serpent energy at the end of the month as well, we have this, and then the transitions that are coming through Kame, there's still dissolving taking place. We're still in the eclipse shadow. It's not the time yet to fully activate things. And so Mars is not quite in its full power. That's a good thing. We're still integrating. So be careful first with your angsty energy, and then you're kind of coming on really hot and then realizing you don't actually have the vital energy to bring something through. That's really what that would be about. And I would say that's why it's much better for us to be really looking at these ancestral portals and gateways and our serpent energies. One of the serpent codes is that we have the wrong relation to death. And so looking at conscious death, looking at our ancestors who died in a strange way, what can I do to help that? Doing things like this and using this annual portal, but that has the right astrology behind it, for that may be a better way. How can I nourish my ancestors through me, through my offerings to them? Things like that, okay? Rather than projecting your transition onto what somebody said or did, okay? Because it's not about that, right? Okay. And then Venus, similarly. So Venus has been, I think Venus has gone into, forgive me, I can't remember offhand, but Venus has been in Libra. It's then going to, in middle of October, so Venus is at home in Libra. It's then going to go into Vishaka, which is going to cusp into Libra and Scorpio. And this is all about the star of purpose. So our purpose, what am I here for? That is definitely up in question. But there's a sense as we come out of the eclipse period, at least the intense part, but yeah, there's a different sense of, yeah, how do I do this? How does it help me? How do I enjoy myself in this? How do I find a beauty way that is more aligned with a higher purpose? That's really up because of where Venus is placed. And then on the 13th, Venus is going to go into Scorpio. And for me, that often is quite more sexual, yeah? So this is where Venus can go into this kind of serpentine energy where it can become too over-sensual, too shadowy. So that's very interesting because it's totally aligning with what's taking place in the Dreamspell calendar. We also have Mercury agitated. So this means that it's sitting very closely to Sun. And it means that, yeah, sometimes speech is too strong, okay? Too authoritarian. And Vishaka can sometimes be too authoritarian too. So just be careful. This is this whole thing, especially with Mars, with Venus, with Mercury. Just be careful how you communicate. Try to use your own body, your own being to harness fire, to work with things. And try to also look at where these These agitations are trying to lead you to understand something more deeply in a multidimensional way. Okay, this is the best way to use these. I've talked about the Virgo Pisces axis, so I'm not going to go too much more into that. But last month I spoke a little bit about Hasta Nakshatra, and this is where major amount of the energy is sitting on the October part of the eclipse season. And what's really interesting is that we have, during that period of time, we have the hand activating. We have a hand day, I believe, on the eclipse day. And so there's this really deep thing about how do we deepen our sense of knowing in the workplace and accomplishment. Also, how we can start to dance with pattern thinking, how we can start to do divination to find our path, rather than being confused in the workplace, confused in life. How does the universe speak to us? How do we get a deeper sense of knowing so that we can find our true place? And so I really encourage you, invite you all to start to see how divination works for you, how you can communicate with the universe and receive messages back, because that will really help you in this time. Okay, and so general synthesis for this month is that, it always does this every month. Okay, so we have strong self-generation energies at the beginning of the month, and this definitely activates a deeper sense of our understanding of how to be in service, especially in the workplace, things like that. And also how we can find our sacred autonomous groove. This is super important. How we don't just show up because we're going through the motions and then realize we're getting sick, we're getting burnt out, but how as well we can really utilize what our 3D job is there to bring into the golden age. What I notice is that so many people want to transition to a more spiritual, wholesome life. They want to know how they can sustain themselves with that. And what we often don't look at is the perfection of the karma that has led us to a certain job, to a certain role, and all the transferable skills that we could then bring into our higher dharma. For instance, every humanitarian organization needs somebody who's good at accounting or social media or people power, people pleasing, whatever it may be. And there may be things that you think, oh my goodness, I'm terrible, I'm terrible for this because I just do this and I hate this job, but it's because we're doing too much of it. But then realize that there's a reason you've been on that path. And there's something that you're going to bring through into the next iteration of how you bring that to bring a new world vibration into being. This is something I think people are missing out on. They want to blindly transition without really having enough experience, without seeing that there's a skill set that they have from their normal day-to-day existence that could come up an octave in the coming years and then be fully their transition point. So look at what's sticking after these eclipses and look at how there might be a reason. This is why astrology is really helpful, because often we're very confused. We feel like we're going through the motions. But if we can see that there's a reason in our karma and dharma, why we've been placed in a certain role, why we have certain skills, this is really useful. Okay. This is, I think, something a lot of people are missing out on. This is also with this is this reason why it's a really good time to start to audit. Okay, I'm not this anymore, but this seems to be sticking. And how could I be intelligent about this actually forming a template for me to be a future pioneer of a new higher timeline? Be careful for these sexy shadow and power imbalance energies that could play out, and be careful that it's not you who's projecting them. So watch excesses of your life force energy, your Martian energy, all of these things. Understand we're not fully baked into our new mold, and try to keep your energetics clean, keep your energetic hygiene, your sexual energy, your life force energy, really just for you, and if you're working with a consort, for them too, but really to just harness your energy. This is super important at this time. And as I said earlier, also you can look at how you use that as a conduit to connect through to the ancestors and to begin to do this work ahead of the larger collective portal that's going to be opening in 2026 and 2027. This is a really good time for you to do that work. And yep, as I've said earlier, the end of the month, this will be where we start to see and feel what eclipse season was bringing through for us. So finally, just to reiterate, this is a great time to work with our transitions. We've got so much celestial support for that. We can look at what it means, subconscious death codes, conscious endings to workplaces that no longer serve, to relationships that no longer serve. Also, it can be also to rivals and competition that's been making us sick. Okay, we can just say, I just choose to walk away from that field of rivalry. Yeah, that can be also helpful. And I choose to use my energy for health and healing. And yeah, we also can really look at what our karmic inheritances have been. What is good? What is not so good? How can we understand how we work with that, with our own energetics, with our own fractal being as a sovereign being? How do we step forward as a sovereign being? And also, because to consolidate everything, when we're not happy in our job, when we keep taking on jobs or scenarios or environments that how would I say, enslave us, this is often because we have a ancestral wound that's been carrying down. We have so many ancestors who were invisible people or worked in these arduous situations, the ones who worked in fields or the factories, had awful things. If we look at things like slavery, indentured labor, all of these things that are sitting, these have been what's been affecting us, maybe opting to take the pathway that isn't going to nourish us spiritually. So actually starting to audit, what have I taken on from my ancestors is making me actually have a life that's sick, that's non-fruitful, that does not inspire me and doesn't lead me to my Dharma. Ultimately, a lot of the keys in there are in the ancestral field, okay? So this is why I feel this is a very, very strong time for us to look at that. And it's actually really just as I said that code really has landed with me of why we're being asked to offer these things at this time. So I want to give gratitude to all of you for giving me the opportunity to land with that final little nugget. And thank you so much for listening. I wish you all a really fruitful and insightful eclipse season and a magical month of October. Gracias, gracias, gracias.